Now, why do rappers have such an issue with black women? I know exactly what you're thinking. But rappers disrespect all women, don't they? Yeah, but they kinda don't.
I don't really like black girls like that.
And what was the reason why this young gentleman by the name of Kodak Black said that he doesn't like black girls like that? Well, let's take a look.
I just said I don't like women with my complexion. I like light-skinned women. I want you to be lighter than me. I love African-American women, but I just don't like my skin complexion. Black people, my complexion, we too gutter. Light-skinned women, they most sensitive, you know?
There's some dark-skinned women out here sensitive.
No, they too tough. They too tough.
Mission failed, because this nigga is absolutely tripping. See, there's levels to the disrespect, and the darker your skin is, the more you catch it.
So I love black African Americans, but I don't like black just like this.
To illustrate this point, I want to start off with a little story. A few years ago, I ended up at this music industry event. One of those nights where there's just a bunch of industry people in a room, everybody came there to network or whatever, and I started talking to this guy, white dude, kind of looked like Rick Grimes from The Walking Dead when he was clean shaven. He worked on music videos, on set, behind the scenes, watching how everything operated up close, and somehow we got onto the topic of how women get treated in those spaces. And he basically told me the lighter skin the models that they were working on set with were, the better treatment they got on set. And I'm looking at him like, wait a second, don't you work with black men primarily? Yes, I do. And that's when I realized that hip-hop has a huge issue with women, black women specifically, and the women ain't the issue. And you can see it on his face. He didn't really understand the contradiction. Like, why would black men of all people be the ones doing that? But that's exactly what he was seeing in the music industry, behind the scenes, consistently, behind closed doors. He'd seen this play out over and over in his years of working on sets. The way conversations shifted depending on the shade of the woman who walked in the room. The way certain women got spoken to with respect, while others got ignored. Lighter skinned women got more direction, more attention, more patience. Darker skinned women treated like they were replaceable. And that's exactly what this guy was witnessing on set, the complexion hierarchy playing out behind closed doors. And he was bringing it up because it confused him, like he couldn't really wrap his head around why black men of all people would be the ones moving like that. Obviously, I wasn't gonna stand there for the next 30 minutes explaining the deep-rooted history of colorism to Rick Grimes, but that conversation never really left me, and it got me thinking about a few things. Like, why does this pattern exist in hip-hop of all places, which is obviously a black genre? And I'm not talking about some small issue that pops up every now and then. This is consistent. It's been going on for decades, and it's gotten so normalized that most people don't even question it anymore. And then I started thinking about specific moments I've seen play out publicly, like this one right here.
Keke Palmer, she's great. I bad her, but you know what I'm saying? I don't really like black girls like that. Some sort of kind of Taylor Swift, great.
So back in 2017, rapper Kodak Black went viral after a fan on Instagram Live asked him if he'd ever date Keke Palmer. Now, first of all, I'm pretty sure Keke of all people would never, okay? But that's beside the point. The fan asked and Kodak said, and I quote, "I'd bag her, but I don't really like black girls like that." Now you could argue that's just a preference, sure. But then the backlash hit and Kodak did an interview and responded. And what he said made it clear that this wasn't about preference at all, because what came out of his mouth wasn't just about who he's attracted to. It was about control and a deep-rooted hierarchy based on skin tone.
If he could say that he likes skinny women, if he prefers skinny women more than a more chubby or heavyset women, he could say that and nobody won't get mad at him. I just said I don't like women with my complexion. I like light-skinned women. I want you to be lighter than me. I love African-American women, but I just don't like my skin complexion.
Okay. Well, I like your skin complexion.
We too gutter. Black people, my complexion, we too gutter. Light-skinned women, they most sensitive, you know?
There's some dark-skinned women out here sensitive.
No, they too tough. They too tough. Light-skinned women, we could break them down more easy, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Yeah. That's it.
Light-skinned women, we can break them down more easy. I don't know whether to call that self-hate, ignorance, or everything in between, because what he's really describing, knowingly or unknowingly, isn't just a weird preference. It's a racial hierarchy, and an imaginary one at that. The idea that lighter skin is softer, more manageable, easier to control, and darker skin is something to be handled differently. Like there's two separate categories. One that's approachable, desirable, worth the effort, and the other, worth less. Now, hip-hop didn't create that idea, but it's been given a microphone to people who've been perpetuating that mindset for a long time. And look, you can have preferences, that's completely fine, but When you start ranking women by skin tone and saying one group is easier to break down than another, you're not just stating what you're attracted to anymore. You're devaluing an entire group of women based on how much melanin they got. And it's strange when that comes from someone who looks like the very women he's dismissing. I personally don't get it. I just don't understand it, nor do I want to. But here's the part that was really interesting about that clip. It was specifically what the woman interviewing him said. Because after he basically just told her to her face that he doesn't go for women who look like her, she looked at him and said, "But I like your skin complexion."
Okay, well, I like your skin complexion.
But that wasn't the only story that caught my attention, because a year before this, there was a video that surfaced of rapper Young Thug at an airport. Now, missing a flight is already a terrible experience. We've all been there, but have you ever missed a flight and called the innocent desk workers peasants? I'm sure we've all done that.
These two ants are so rude.
You need to get me off the camera and
Look,
you need to step away from this
These
camera.
two ants are so rude. They peasants.
So not only peasants, but let's mock their hair, the same hair texture his mother has, and then call them Africans like that's supposed to be an insult.
Your manager peasant. Y'all ants. I give y'all bum ass hole 15,000 a piece to quit your job. Willing. I'm giving you bums one more chance. Get their hair. Sink in on the hair. They have that. They look like Africans. They done got deported over.
Coming from a black man in America. What makes this really interesting is the kind of rapper Young Thug actually is. For a very long time, Thug has been one of the most celebrated figures in hip-hop for being different, painting his nails, wearing dresses on album covers, calling his homies hubby, and sucking on their chains. That's not AI? No, this is not AI. He was the poster child for pushing boundaries in rap, and who was defending him when everybody else was clowning him for that? Black women. But then he misses a flight and two black women standing behind an airport counter, just doing their jobs, representing authority in that moment, become the target of every insult in the book. So that tells us that you can wear every single dress in the closet, but some things don't change because the outfit did. In other words, what you wear doesn't define progression. What matters is how you treat people. Now, none of this started with Young Thug or Kodak Black. To actually understand where this comes from, you have to go back further than that. Hip-hop came from places where having real power generally wasn't an option. Whole communities cut off from opportunity, schools underfunded on purpose, mass incarceration pulling fathers out of households left and right. That was the actual environment this music was born in. And when you grow up watching power exist but never belong to you, the frustration doesn't just disappear, it goes somewhere. And you can hear where it went if you listen to how the music actually changed. If you trace hip-hop from the early 80s to the mid-90s, especially what made it to the mainstream, you can literally hear this shift. Like Public Enemy was literally out here making music about taking down racist institutions and calling out the government directly. That was the energy. And then the late 80s happened and suddenly the target changed. The anger wasn't aimed at the system anymore. Now it was the girl down the block who started catching heat. The women in these rappers' own households, the one who was just there, the average everyday black woman.
Career, and to be very honest, much of this I can't even say on television, but I want to read some of this to you. So what about the bitch that got shot? F her. You think I care about a bitch? I ain't a sucker.
Right.
Songs
That's
titled...
not talking about women, though.
What is it talking about?
A lot of women bitches. It's a difference. I figure a bitch is someone that does like scandalous things to you.
You have another song called Real Niggas.
And people in the community saw it happening in real time. They watched the lyrics shift from fighting oppression to degrading black women. And they started speaking up, organizing, pushing back against what the men in hip-hop were pushing.
I'm here because I'm outraged at the denigration of black women. And as a father, as a son, my mother, my sisters, our wives, our girlfriends have been denigrated, and these are against the values of our community.
But the pushback couldn't compete with how profitable the disrespect had become. The louder the messaging got, the deeper the culture absorbed it. And what used to spark outrage just became a part of the soundtrack.
Music actually generally is now associated so much with misogyny and sexism.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Why did that happen?
I can't say overall why this has happened. There's a lot of things that I think have contributed to it, but...
Such as
the fact that radio stations are not owned by mom and pop places in their own communities, that they just got bought by big corporations. And
so why did the anger redirect like that in the first place? Why did the target shift from systems to the woman closest to home? Well, I think part of it is you can't wrap your way into institutional power. You can't conquer a system that was built to keep you out. But the woman right next to you, she was close enough to love, close enough to rely on, close enough to dominate. when you yourself couldn't win the fight you were rapping against. When the real enemy is too big to fight, you start looking for somewhere else to direct that frustration. And I think this is why black women ended up catching it the way they did, because they were always right there. They were always just right there next to the black man, in the struggle, in the household, in the culture. Basically, proximity made them accessible when the real target wasn't. And I don't think this is just about individual artists being messy or ignorant, although that's definitely part of it. I think there's something deeper going on that nobody really talks about. I've never really heard anyone talk about this, have this type of conversation in the way that I'm doing at least. And it shows up in who gets treated the worst. Like, have you ever noticed that the darker a woman is, the less grace she tends to get in this culture? Whether it's who gets to be in the videos, who gets called beautiful in the lyrics, who gets defended when they mess up, and who gets torn apart just for existing. And that's not random either, because for a lot of these men, a darker skinned woman isn't just a woman. She's a mirror. She reflects something back to them that they've been taught their whole lives to be ashamed of. And that shame doesn't just sit there. It looks for somewhere to go. And I know that this might sound deep, and if I'm losing you in this conversation, please let me know. But just connect it back to what we already saw. Kodak literally told you which women he feels are easier to control. Young Thug literally used blackness itself as an insult when he was angry. That's not a coincidence. That's the same thing playing out in two completely different scenarios. And here's the thing, it's not just the men either, because the women on the receiving end of all this didn't get here by accident. Think about the picture that hip-hop painted of the so-called ideal woman, the one who holds it down no matter what, a ride or die if you will. Doesn't complain, doesn't ask for better, just absorbs whatever comes her way and stays loyal through all of it. That's been celebrated as the ideal woman in hip hop. And in that celebration, I believe that a lot of women just got used to shrinking themselves to fit into that box. Like that became the version of themselves they thought they needed to be accepted in this culture. And that's kind of the whole cycle here. The culture performs power through rejection and then turns around and rewards women for absorbing that. And the more I sit with all this, the more I keep coming back to one question that I don't think gets asked enough. How is it that some of the loudest anti-black women energy doesn't come from outside of this culture? It actually comes from inside of it. From men who grew up surrounded by black women, raised by them, loved by them. And aside from the fact that skin folk ain't always kinfolk, there's something else that stands out to me. Black men are basically the only group of men who can openly disrespect their own women and get monetarily rewarded and celebrated for it. And that part I never really understood, because if you look at any other group of men, Asian men, Latino men, white men, publicly degrading the women from their own community would get them checked, probably even slapped in 4K by their own people. But in hip hop, it became a part of the brand, part of what gets you streams, part of what gets you cosigns and respect. Very weird. So I guess the question is, where does that actually come from? I want to lead with something Dr. Umar Johnson talked about years ago. Now I know he's a controversial figure depending on who you ask, but on this point, he's always been consistent. He's talked about how a lot of rappers intentionally exclude black women from their videos, not because of preference, but as a signal, a way to communicate that they've made it, that they're not in the hood anymore, that they escaped.
Let's be honest, nearly every major rapper you name has said something derogatory against dark-skinned black women.
Or uplifted lighter women and not saying anything about the
look at the videos.
Yeah.
Now I'm seeing videos now where every woman in the video is like almost white. You never saw that with a hood video.
And it's the same logic behind who they date publicly. For a lot of successful black entertainers, but rappers specifically, getting with women outside their race became another way to show the world that they've made it. When you can't escape the system, you escape the symbols. And black women, especially darker skinned black women, became the symbol of what these men were running from. If you spend your whole life in an environment where everyone around you looked a certain way, and then you finally make it, dating someone who's not a reflection of that environment becomes a way of proving you escaped it. Basically, it becomes a status symbol, a flex, a way of saying, I'm not there anymore. And the women who get left behind in that equation, the ones who look like the community you came from, they become a reminder of where you're trying to distance yourself from. Not because they did anything wrong, but because they represent the part of your story you've been conditioned to see as the struggle, not the success. And I think that's part of why the disrespect has gotten so loud. Because if you've already mentally distanced yourself from black women, if they represent something you're trying to escape, then degrading them publicly doesn't feel like you're attacking your own. It feels like you're separating yourself even further from something you don't want to be associated with, in this case, an entire race of women. But that's only part of it. One of the bigger parts is what the culture has normalized, because hip-hop has this thing where behaviors that would raise eyebrows anywhere else just doesn't raise eyebrows here. because it's gotten so deeply absorbed into the aesthetic, into the identity. The videos, the lyrics, the way rappers talk about women when the cameras are on and when they're not. And after a while, nobody even questions it anymore. It just becomes a part of what's to be expected. And I think for some of these men, it goes even deeper than that, because when you grow up being told, directly or indirectly, that how you look is the reason doors don't open for you, or why you're seen as a threat before you even speak, why you have to move differently just to be treated like everyone else, that does something to you mentally. And it tends to show up in the relationships closest to you, the ones you're dating, the relationships you're in, because intimacy has a way of bringing out whatever you haven't dealt with internally. And what makes this even more interesting is that this isn't just a men thing. This pattern runs so deep in this culture that even the women inside it start enforcing the same hierarchy on each other. Like Sexy Red is a good example of this, who built her whole career off being unapologetically herself, who black women streamed and defended and put on. I remember that one time when she posted a video of her straightened hair and said, "You carpet hair beanie neck hoes could never," to women with 4C hair. And 4C hair is the natural hair type that most black women have. When the backlash hit, she tried to walk it back, and she said that she messes with carpet hair, but that she would still say it again if somebody talked back to her. And that right there tells you everything about how deep this goes. It's not just coming from the men. Even the women inside the culture start policing each other, using the same discriminatory ideas that were used against them. That's how normalized it's gotten. And that normalization didn't just happen in the lyrics or on social media. You can literally see it play out visually. If you watch how hip-hop videos have changed over time, one of the first things you'll notice is the shift in who's actually in these videos. I urge everyone to go back and watch old hip-hop videos from, let's say, the early 90s. Different skin tones, different body types. The women in the videos actually looked like the women in the community. Everybody was in the room. But then somewhere along the way that changed. The standard got narrower, lighter skin, longer hair, features closer to a Eurocentric beauty standard, the kind that reads as racially ambiguous instead of unmistakably black. That became the standard, and if you didn't fit that mold, you were in the background or you weren't in the video at all. I guess when you zoom out and look at all of this, Kodak, Young Thug, Sexy Red, it's all pointing at the same thing. Different situations, different moments, but the same pattern runs underneath all of it. It's obvious that in this genre that we call hip-hop, everybody doesn't get treated the same. The lighter you are, the more grace you get. The darker you are, the less room for error. Some people get to be human, messy, flawed, complicated, and still be loved. Others have to be flawless just to be considered. And all of this didn't start with hip-hop. It's sad that hip-hop became one of the loudest platforms where this plays out. The women who contributed to this culture defended these artists, streamed the music, showed up consistently. They've been on the receiving end of a lot of disrespect for the longest. Not because they deserved it, not because they invited it, just because they were within reach. I guess the moral of the story is that rappers clearly have an issue with black women. But it's not just individual artists being ignorant or messy. It's a cultural problem, and I think that's an issue in itself. If you made it this far, drop a like on this video and subscribe if you're new here. My name is Blacky Speaks. Nice to meet you. So let me ask you, do rappers actually have an issue with black women or not? What do you think? I'm genuinely curious to hear your perspective on this. And as always, catch you guys in the next one, man. Peace. I'm out.